Professor Sweezy, Chapter 9, Problem 2, Take 1, in 5, 4.
Okay, now let's tackle the variances pertaining to the variable overhead and the fixed overhead. VOH stands for variable overhead and FOH stands for fixed overhead. So we have variable overhead spending variance is the equivalent of price variance when it comes to direct labor and direct material, and the variable overhead efficiency variance here. So here we are allocating variable overhead and fixed overhead based on labor hours, direct labor hours. Let's see what we get for variable overhead spending variance. So here we get this one, this is given, which is $756,000. It's given the actual variable overhead incurred minus the actual quantity of direct labor hour, which is given again 8,400 direct labor hours times the standard rate or the standard price. Okay, in the formula, the other formula, direct material, direct labor, we use standard price. This is the same. Okay, which is $8. $8 of variable overhead per direct labor hours. So we got here, we got 84,000 unfavorable, right? Okay. Now let's tackle the variable overhead efficiency variance. So the standard rate is given, which is what? The standard rate is $8 per direct labor hours. That's the allocation rate for variable overhead. 8,400 here, which is the actual quantity direct labor hours. The standard quantity will be, okay, this 84,000, I'm sorry here, 84,000. Okay, so instead it's not 8,400, it's 84,000. Okay, 84,000 minus the standard quantity, which is, what is the standard quantity? Is 88,000. How do you get the standard quantity? Again, the same definition. The standard quantity, the standard input allowed for the actual output. Here the input is direct labor hours. Why? Because we're allocating variable overhead based on direct labor hours. So how do you get this 88,000? It's that's the standard quantity, by the way, standard quantity, which is 8 labor hours per unit times what? Times 11,000, which is the actual output. So 8 hours for direct labor is allowed for each unit of output. Given that our actual output consists of 11,000, then the standard quantity allowed for that actual output is the 88,000. And then our variance is going to be, our variable overhead efficiency variance is going to be 32,000 unfavorable. 32,000 favorable, I'm sorry. Okay, why favorable? Because we use less direct labor hours than what the standard calls for. Okay, so what is our flexible budget variance for the variable overhead? Again, we net them out and we get the difference here, 84 minus 32, you get 52,000 unfavorable. So you can write it down here, flexible budget variance, okay, is going to be 52,000 unfavorable, okay? Or you can add variable overhead, flexible budget variance. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the next variance, which is the one pertaining to the fixed overhead spending variance. This is pretty straightforward, the fixed overhead. The fixed overhead spending variance. Actual fixed overhead is given, which is 1 million. And the budgeted is 960,000. Clearly here we outrun the budget, you know, which is 40,000 unfavorable. Okay. Okay. So by the way, yeah. Okay. So let's calculate now the fixed overhead volume variance. Okay, which is the budget. This is a very peculiar to the fixed overhead. Okay, we don't have such thing in other variances, the fixed overhead volume variance. And then as I mentioned in the lecture, that you should look at this variance or interpret this variance from a capacity users perspective. Okay, so let's see what I mean with this capacity user user's perspective. What is our budget fixed overhead? Budget fixed overhead is given, which is 960. Okay. Oh, it's the budget is. Hold on a second. Yep, 960 minus. What is the standard, the allocated fixed overhead? Standard rate times the standard quantity. Let's calculate it. What is the standard rate? Standard rate is.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to